For this next chapter, we're going to have a look at spacing between characters, in this case tracking, and also the space between lines, leading. We're also going to have a look at kerning at a later date. However, that's slightly more advanced and not so easy to work on within Canva. There's no specific setting for kerning, which is the space between two individual characters within a word. What do I mean by that? Well, if we're to have a look at some of the text on these designs, let's just say this one, for example, the space between these characters here is different between the space between these two here. It's to create an optical illusion that it's nicely balanced and even spaced, even though it isn't. That's kerning, and we're going to drop that for now and go on to tracking and leading. So I've got a paragraph here. First of all, we're going to bump the size up so we can see it a little bit easier on our design. We're not going to worry about any color settings or anything at the moment. We might just align it to the center of the canvas. And then we can also just add a second paragraph in there as well. So some of our standard options we've got available to us are the alignment, and for simplicity, we're going to keep it left aligned here. Okay, first off, let's start looking at tracking. So I'm going to select all of the text, and now I can go to the spacing option in Canva, and we can look at letter spacing. Because we're working on percentages of the existing gaps between the characters, as we know from kerning, these characters are not evenly spaced. It depends on the combination of the two characters next to each other to make up the word. So the way tracking works is it will increase or decrease as a percentage of the existing space between those characters. And it will do this automatically for you, as long as you can just adjust this slider. So if you wanted a really wide spacing between characters, you can bring it all the way up to the maximum of 800. Of course, for paragraph text, that's going to be a huge problem for any of your audience to be able to read that. Likewise, if we go to tight, it looks like there's a little bit of an issue. If ever in doubt with any of these settings, keep them at default. What you'll often find is that font designers have spent painstaking time into getting the spacing right. However, there are certain occasions where you may want to tighten it up. So for example, if we're looking at a brand. So I'm going to go to our text option here and add in a heading. I'm just going to move it into a bit of space. And we'll put a company name in there. So we know that the kerning's already been set for this font by an experienced font designer. We can change it should we want to. If we're finding that we want to use this more compact for our brand, we can then go to the spacing and maybe just start reducing it a little bit. You can see already that there's a complete difference in terms of how that looks. If we were to bring that then for the paragraph and put it as -76, we can see that's already too cramped for paragraph content. Certainly too much for my liking. You can see the E and the F is almost touching. The readability of this text becomes that much more difficult. We want to avoid that. So again, we can go back to the spacing tab and just adjust it. So if we wanted it a little bit tighter, maybe we go -20 at most. So we've got a few options here. The one thing we can see now, this is quite widely spaced compared to the title, but for titles we can get away with that slightly more compact look. Just to finish up, I think I'm going to put the whole letter spacing for the paragraph area at -20 to get that balance in between. Don't want to go much tighter than that. The other thing I haven't uploaded is a medium font weight for the paragraph. So we often use Arimo for our body text. Because it's slightly lighter and goes well with our heading. So once again, I can go in here and just take it back to default spacing. And that's quite a nice balance now between our title, which is all caps, tightly compact layout, and then our slightly more fluid paragraph format. So the next thing we might look at is the leading. How much space are we going to have between each line in this paragraph? And then we can adjust the spacing between the paragraph and the title by eye. Because our title is a different font, it's in a different text container, we just have to adjust it using the on-screen guides and also by eye. So the one thing we covered in a previous chapter, and if I can bring up a shape here, we can see the edge of this text isn't matching the edge of the title. So we can select the main title and then just nudge it left 3 spaces using the arrow key on the keyboard. And now we've got it aligned. However, I might just bring it back over one more, sometimes 2. Like with kerning, it's about getting the perception of it even, because the weighting of this font, even if it is perfectly aligned like it is there, it feels like it's heavier weighted to the left, so it feels like it's slightly offset. So we just have to adjust it by eye, so we can trick the eye of the reader to feel that that's all nice and uniform. Our final step then is we adjust the paragraph height using line spacing, which is leading. Adjusted to 1.2. That's a little bit too compact for me. 1.3. Of course, we can use the slider instead. And that's got a nice balance for what I'd want. So here now, with everything set, we can start adding imagery in. We can start designing around it. Also, going back to our spaceman principle, we've got even spacing either side, even though this isn't justified text, so the text isn't spaced to fill the block. I'm personally not a fan of justification of text. We've got that nice breathing space around the outside of the text. Hope this helped. We'll catch up with you in the next chapter.